Hello, and welcome to the Flipside. I'm hoping that today's episode will be as interesting or fascinating to you as I know it's going to be for myself. Our guest today is someone who I've known for quite a long time. I met this individual back when I was still in chiropractic college, which is over 25 years now. Um, and I've had a lot of uh, interactions with this gentleman. This gentleman is someone who is known for his heart in the chiropractic community. So I think he's going to have a lot to share with us about the heart and how that plays out in the things that we do in our life. So without further ado, I'm going to admit into our podcast our guest for today. So our guest today is Dr. Stu Bittman. Sir, how are you? You are on mute still. There you go.
Okay, well, I'm still good. Thank you.
Well, this is the first time you and I have actually seen each other eye to eye in a long time. I was just doing a little bit of an introduction before I let you into the podcast there, saying that I've known you for um, 26 years, maybe 27 years is probably the first time I met you. You probably don't remember the first time you met me, but you were speaking. I think it was at Cleveland Chiropractic College the first time. So long time ago.
When we were 11 and 12 years old, I think it was.
Exactly. But it's been a long time. I mean, I can't remember the last time we actually saw each other in person. It's been a long time. Do you recall the fact that I actually covered your office?
I did. I
Yeah,
do. I do,
yeah.
and I did. But
Back
I,
this,
but we didn't really see each other, did we?
no, not then,
No,
not at all.
okay.
Yeah, that was probably 2002, maybe
Uh,
2001. It was
I'm counting on you, Michael,
a
on
long
that.
time ago. I will tell you that was a wonderful experience for me. I was brand new. I had just graduated maybe a couple of years, um, and you were doing something, going on vacation or going speaking. I don't know, but needed someone to cover your office. So I drove from the San Francisco area up to the Tahoe area to cover your practice. Um, I didn't realize how much snow there was going to be. Um, I should have had a snowplow going to get to your place, but I stayed in your house and I watched your office for a week. Um, I remember putting on snowshoes and walking out your back door and walking for miles into the snow in the sun. It was beautiful, beautiful, but it was
Nice.
a wonderful experience. And I want to talk more about that, my experience with your office, because that's
Cool.
part of what I want to talk about today
Cool.
with,
Because I haven't heard it before. So this is
I
good.
don't think you have. Yeah. Well, it's really more just about my experience in your office and the way that the intention that you created in your office. And I think that's a big part about the way you live your life. And it was reflected in your office.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
It was a great experience.
People enjoyed you. I remember
Yeah.
that.
Well, it was a mutual love fest going on. So,
Nice.
um, why don't we start off with you giving us kind of a catch up from the beginning to today? Uh,
Okay.
brief, obviously, but just tell us your experience with chiropractic leading you up to this moment in time. What brought you into chiropractic, and just a little bit about your experience.
All right.
Pretend nobody knows who you are. There can be a lot of people that will know who you are, but there's
Okay.
also probably going to be a lot that don't. So,
Well, yes, you realize at our age it can be a very long story, but let's see the highlights. I graduated from what was then the Los Angeles College of Chiropractic.
ah,
Uh,
LACC.
After I graduated, they took chiropractic out of the name, which I feel was probably a pretty honest decision on their part. Uh, I graduated as the valedictorian. And I had incredibly ridiculous scores on my national boards. Anyway, I'm saying this just because my journey has been more of a process of unlearning, probably than learning. I mean, I learned a lot, and I'm not saying it was a waste of time, but some of it interfered with my intention as I was to discover it. So I muddled along with what I learned for a few years. I was not doing all that well, I guess you could say. In fact, I remember being frightened when new patients were coming in because I really didn't know, what I was supposed to be doing with them. I mean, I knew what I was taught to do with them, but somehow there was something missing for me, even though I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Anyway, after a few years, I went to a Parker seminar, and actually, the first Parker seminar was a huge seminar. It was like 8,000 people. I think it was the biggest
Wow.
one ever. I was blown away by the energy, by the passion of people, but I don't think I got too much out of it because I was too stuck in my left brain. In fact, I think I was wandered into Sigafoos's room at some point and promptly walked out after about an hour because he insulted my physical therapy equipment and stuff like this. I don't
Yeah,
know
that
if that
whole
was
thing's
part
going
of
to
your
make a full
bio,
loop.
but
That's going to make a full loop right there because that's a significant little statement you just made. So,
it is.
yeah.
There were quite a few people who would walk out of the room with Parker on Sigafoos in those days, which I, later came to admire him a lot for speaking in places where he wasn't necessarily um, preaching to the choir, shall we
When
say.
did you graduate?
I graduated in 86,
86. Okay.
1986, by the
Gotcha.
way, just to
Yep. Yep.
just
Yep.
to be.
That wasn't
So I think
1986, right? Okay. Yeah.
I think so. This Parker was probably like 89. And yes, I didn't get much out of it. I didn't change much, but I had a bunch of new people the first week when I came back. So I suppose a year later, when somebody suggested, let's go to Parker again, I said, well, I could use 4 or 5 new people again. So I chose to go. And anyway, this time, for whatever reason, I was ready. I fell in love
Wa-
with Sigafoos. Some other
Was this in
people.
Dallas?
It was probably in Dallas, but
Yeah.
no, actually, probably more Las Vegas. That was more of an
Gotcha.
attractive destination for me. After a while, I started going to almost every Parker, so that included a couple of times a year in Dallas. But yeah, I just sort of, I guess you could say, caught the big idea. Interestingly, actually, not from a chiropractic speaker, but from a PhD named Dean Black.
I
If you
don't know who
remember
that is. Who
Dean,
was that? No.
he's a PhD. He was involved in Sunrider projects for anybody who might be familiar with those. But he wrote some beautiful books. He actually was on the Parker faculty for a few years. But it was essentially it was the first talk I ever heard on quantum physics, which pretty much, well, I felt after Dean Black's talk that the entire foundation that I had been resting on my entire life was not there anymore, which was a good thing. It was a little disorienting.
Paradigm shifts usually are.
It was a major paradigm, and if we have time, I could even tell you the well, I'll tell you. He started talking about soliton or soliton waves,
Okay.
um, discovered originally by a Scottish scientist who was riding a horse. This is in the 1700s, and he was riding his horse by a canal, and some craft came through the canal, a rowboat, I guess, and created a wake. And he started to follow this wake, and it went on for miles in this canal. And he was riding along the whole time saying this is impossible because waves dissipate their energy over distance. But what he proposed was the energy was hitting the structure of the canal and coming back into the wave at the same rate as it was dissipating. So it propagated itself. And so anyway, apparently soliton waves are how lasers work, and Dean Black theorized that perhaps that's how the nerve impulse propagates without losing any energy. And then he'd say, so what, like with a laser, if you take a laser and you deform the structural housing of the laser, it immediately changes from a laser beam, going 10,000 kilometers into space and cutting through steel to just regular light. So he says, well, what would happen if you deformed the structural canal, so to speak, of the nerve root? So anyway, I'm like crying at this, and I'm believe it or not, he's passed on now, but through the rest of his life, he's probably tripping out over the guy who was sitting in the front row crying about his
Having an emotional release.
lecture. So, but anyway, it just dropped the whole floor out from under my classical science belief system, which I knew was not the whole story, but I couldn't, again, put my finger on it. So that left me wide open, and I happened to be at a Parker seminar, so I wandered into some of the rooms, like Sisyphus again, and this time, as I jokingly say, he changed everything he talked about. He didn't change anything he talked about. Obviously what had changed was me. And it just felt like this huge hole in my chest that had been there for decades, probably, was being filled. So I was very motivated to fill it more. So I just sought out every bit of philosophy, every bit of principle in chiropractic that I could find, in addition to just a spiritual journey, I guess you can say, kind of began with that. So let's see, I came back from that with a bit of more purpose, and I started adjusting kids, and I started, or at least being open to, I wasn't adjusting many of them, but things slowly
Were you in Tahoe at the
improved.
time?
Still in Tahoe. My whole
Okay.
career was
Yeah.
in Tahoe. So, and then somewhere along the way, I started going on these mission trips to Panama. I have a feeling it was a mission trip I went on in 2002 when you were covering my practice, but that's usually the only reason I left in those days.
Gotcha.
So it was a remarkable experience. Especially the first few trips to Panama, we adjusted tens, hundreds of thousands of people, upper cervical only. We were with people for 8 seconds, and we saw a bunch of them just heal up before our eyes. And I mean, I could talk the whole time about Panama, Michael, but it was amazing to see the vibrational energy of a country change before your eyes. And
I've heard
people
stories.
smiling and talking about smiling and talking about kids in special schools smiling for the first time in their lives. And, I was the valedictorian at LACC, but I probably don't have to tell you that we didn't learn a smile adjustment or but amazing things were happening. And so I went to Panama, or the first 4 Panama mission trips. And yeah, they were incredibly life-changing and practice-changing for me. I took that and, started on a journey of simplifying and not what I consider interfering with the process with my educated mind and my agendas and my expectations and mostly my limitations that I tend to place on things and people. I saw what was possible when we just give our gift away with no strings attached. And in fact, it was the beauty of it was I couldn't really attach to anything because they speak Spanish in Panama. I don't. I learned a couple of phrases just to steer people around the process, mess those up generally. But the one thing I really learned to say was, and I'm not even sure if this is correct, but I learned to say yo también when it seemed clear people were complaining about pain and something, which means me too, or and they would laugh and I would laugh and that would be it. We'd adjust them and I'd give them a kiss on the forehead and they'd bless me and move on. And this went on like, 2,000 times in a day. So, yeah, in fact, on one of the trips, we attempted to learn in Spanish a big Sisyphus saying, which was, we move the bone, God does the healing.
Yes.
And one guy was telling people all day, I move the egg, and God does the healing. And people still came back by the thousands the next day, probably carrying bushels of eggs or something. But so those were very much defining moments. I came back from the second Panama trip, so we're all the way up to 1998 or something now. I got rid of my fees and put a box up, not on the wall, but on the back of the front desk.
Yeah.
And I had people come to a mandatory pre-care talk. And if they liked what they heard and they wanted it to be part of their life, then they got to decide the fee.
Are you
So,
still
yeah,
boxing the wall?
I still unbox the wall in things I'm not in practice anymore.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
But in the things I am doing, I am still
Yeah.
box on the wall. Yes. Yeah, so the last 12 years of my practice were box on the wall. We saw pretty high numbers.
So now I'm going to stop you for a second.
Okay,
There's
thank you.
going to be people out there that are going to be going, hell is he talking about box on the wall? What are you talking about? So explain box on the wall. Yours is the only practice I've ever been to that was box on the wall, because there's hardly anybody out there doing it now. I mean, it was a thing for a long time. Reggie Gold that was like his big thing. That was the first business model that I was actually taught, not at school, but I bought Reggie's tapes. And that was one of the first models that I was taught. I never did it in my office. I never took insurance, but I never did that, mainly because of my own fear. It was just a fear thing, but I always loved the concept, and I saw it in action at your office. So explain that.
I love the concept too for years and didn't do it, but I'll get to that. Yeah, so I don't remember the gentleman's name. Spears? Not Spears. Anyway, I think in the 20s it started as what's called GPC, which was
Right.
patient chiropractor. And
Yeah.
but what he did was he would sit down with the patient and they would decide what they were going to pay, and then there was actually a contract signed. That evolved over the years. Some of the, like Joe Strauss, I think is the guy who popularized it. And so the way I did it was there was no contract. I explained the law of exchange to people. I did my best to have them understand that they were not going to get more than they were giving. So I encouraged them to pay the most they could. And this was, again, if they wanted to make it part of their lifestyle, and then they essentially paid the most they could pay. And so some people paid by the month, some people, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
if it was a check, I had a guess. But so every day, at the end of the day, we would dump the money out of the box in a paper bag and go home. And my wife never let me count it, which I thought was okay. I didn't really want to know, but she enjoyed counting it all those years, and then we enjoyed like filing our taxes and knowing that all we did was count up a bunch of cash. It was a bit hard to prove, but anyway, that's the box on the wall. I mean, people have done it in different ways, and there were people who were doing it back east. I think when I was doing it, I may have been the only one west of the Mississippi who was doing it. And like you say,
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me.
And
Yeah.
I just loved it because it took the attachment out of it for me. I didn't want to handles or, and I don't use the word treat, but I guess in a generic sense, I didn't want to treat people differently based on how much they were paying. I didn't want to know. I didn't, I would tell people, and maybe I didn't tell them that, but my thinking was if they were in violation of the law of exchange, at least I wasn't an accomplice. And so that felt really good to me. And I learned in Panama again that when I give my gift away freely, I am more than taken care of. And that's what happened.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I love it. I really do. There were times when that's where the direction I wanted to go. It wasn't just myself, but my wife and I both in our office, and it was kind of a scary discussion to even think about going that way because student loans. That was one thing that Reggie used to talk about. He would say that he would talk about it, and I can't say exactly what he said, so I'm paraphrasing, but he would say something to the extent of, box on the wall is the purest expression, that this is really where everybody should be if they could, but that in the current time with student loans and everything, that it's not as practical as it used to be. And that was definitely my headspace, but I loved being in your office and watching the way things worked, because to me, it was really, that was the ideal situation.
I loved it. It was very free. It was very freeing. I didn't have any student loans anymore when I probably made the decision. But again, after that second Panama mission, the only way I could describe it is I could no longer not do it.
Right, right.
So no matter, it's not like I didn't have fears, or it's not like I didn't have, reasons, practical reasons, prudent reasons. In fact, Sigafoos pretty much tried to talk me out of it.
Now,
And I was
segue into that.
paying him,
Segue into how you connected with Sigafus, because that ended up being a very significant uh, person in your life, very significant, and for many years, a big part of your focus. So, um, how did that transpire from being someone who didn't want to be in the same room listening to him talk to being someone who talked with him in his seminars?
Yeah, I mean, he was at every Parker, so every time I went, I'd hear him speak, and he was my favorite speaker, but he didn't know me. It wasn't, so he did this workshop called The Gathering.
Yes.
Him and Dick Santo and Dr. Cecil Collins, they're all gone now. Um, anyway, it's a good story too. He was promoting it at a Parker, and I got this, oh no, this is what happened. John D. Martini was speaking, and he ran us through a guided visualization, and I had the clearest vision I'd ever had, and it was spending the weekend in the desert with Sigafus.
Okay.
And this, of course, seemed crazy to me because you're right. It's just a couple of years earlier that I'd walked out on him, and now he was God to me. So, how am I going to spend the weekend in the desert with him? So, sure enough, when he was speaking, they're handing out some pamphlet for something called The Gathering in Sedona, Arizona. Well, happens to be the desert, right? So, believe it or not, even though I had this vision, I did not go. I talked myself out of going. And then the next Parker, he's advertising a gathering in Bonnie Springs, Nevada, which is also desert. So I said, I can't, I can't not do this again. So I decided to go. And the first night of it, we're doing this holotropic breathwork stuff. And it's wild, and I'm having the incredible spiritual experience. And so I started going to multiple Sigfus gatherings a year, and that's where we loosely got to know each other. He called me Tahoe for a couple of years, so that was at least I knew he knew who I was. And then there was one gathering where I looked over at a meal or something, and my daughter, who was probably 7 years old at the time, 6, was sitting on his lap. Right, so that was kind of a that was kind of the opening. Uh, she paved the way. And then the first Panama mission in '97 is where we really connected. And interestingly, what would happen was we'd be sitting on the beach talking, my wife and I and him, and a student would come over, and you'd see like a light bulb. He would switch from being Sigafus the person to Sigafus the speaker or teacher, and Hillary and I would walk away. And I think he really respected that and admired that he saw that we weren't just trying to suck his energy, which I think he was a little sensitive to.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sure. Yeah.
so we just started to. He learned my name. That was a big event.
That was the first step.
And
When did he say, when did he learn your name and then say, I'd like you to be part of this whole show?
it just started, so there was opportunities to share at all the gatherings. So I started sharing, and then at some point I just started doing more, started helping with the breathing. My wife actually started to lead the breath work there. And yeah, it just started to take a bigger role. And then, Dick Santo got sick, and so I started to take up some of his role there. And yeah, and then Cecil also stepped away for a while, so I was pretty much him and I doing it. And then he was having some heart issues, so sometimes we would be in a high altitude place, and he wouldn't really get out of his room for the whole weekend. So I started pretty much doing the whole thing. And
Wow.
this was big for me because that's a big part of what I'm doing now, leading personal development workshops similar to the gathering, or I guess you could say an evolution. from the gathering.
I've got a photo I want to show you.
Yeah,
Look at that.
awesome.
So this was at Cleveland Chiropractic College. That's me, of course, there. Thin and svelte with a little facial hair. But we had Sigafus come in and speak, and that was an amazing experience. So that was my one interaction with Mr. Sigafus.
I remember that shirt.
It's probably one of many, right? I mean, that was one of his things, was wearing those loud Hawaiian shirts.
Loud shirts, loud shoes,
Loud person. Yeah.
loud glasses, loud watches.
I had
Yeah,
a really good friend of mine who I'll mention the name. I don't know if you'll know him or not. Do you know Dr. Rick Araya?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. When he found out that you were going to be my guest, that I was going to be recording, he was like, "Oh, love Stu. I've been following Stu for so long." So
Cool.
he's going to be watching this podcast when we post it for sure.
Hello, Rick.
Yeah, hello, Rick. Rick, my best friend in chiropractic college, and a big follower of Sigafus and a big fan of yours. So
Thanks.
catch us up to speed with what your current role is, what you're doing now. And then there's some very specific things I'd like to talk about,
Okay.
but continue.
See, so 2008, I sold the practice. I became involved in as a minister of a non-denominational spiritual center.
That's what I remember that.
And so Hillary and I were actually the co-leaders of this. We didn't really call it a church, but for lack of a better term, that's what it is. And so we were running a chiropractic practice and a church, and it kind of proved to be too much. And around that time, my body was starting to talk to me a bit. My hip was an issue. So I amazingly, still actually to this day, I'm sort of surprised by the choice that we made to step out of chiropractic practice and devote our time to that. I justified it at the time by saying I would be treating more of the cause of subluxation. And I sort of stand by that intellectually, but it was not very long at all into that career of ours that we realized people were not making the kind of changes that we saw them making in practice. They weren't getting adjusted, most of them, or some of them.
Yeah.
So that's obviously was the major factor, probably. But also, we found people were sort of more into the fellowship, the just getting together with other people. It wasn't like they were there to change necessarily, if you know what I mean. Whereas in chiropractic practice, that's generally more of a thing. So that got me even more in doing workshops and stuff, learn some other tools. So right now I'm coaching, I guess you could call it. I'm not sure to this day what to call what I do. It's mentoring, coaching. It's and mostly chiropractors and mostly in Europe.
Interesting.
Because one of the things that happened early on in my friendship with Sigafus is he started speaking over there a lot. And he brought me over. I brought myself over, but he got me onto stages and into things that I'm still on today. So almost 20 years later.
Which countries mostly?
My Chiro Europe was the big one. That's in Spain. Chiropractic Essentials in England. They just celebrated their 25th anniversary. I spoke at the first one, again, when I was 11. So yeah, that started me. I have more following in Europe. I've never really been able to get on get a regular platform in the United States on any of the big seminars. I've spoken at a lot of them, but I don't go to all of them. And so anyway, I don't tick some of the boxes that are required to develop in that area. So yeah, so I'm coaching like 20 something people, mostly chiropractors, I think, except for two. It's mostly personal development stuff. And Hillary and my wife and I teach a workshop called Chiropractic from the Heart, which we've been doing in some form since I knew you, I think, or shortly after, or saw you the last time. Again, mostly in Europe. So we've been going over to Europe like twice a year for about a month at a time each time, and we'll do a workshop or two and play the rest of the
Nice.
time. I have a lot of friends over there. So yeah, and I'm coaching two and a half days a week. So yeah, enjoying my life tremendously. Still like to keep my hand in at least the chiropractic profession, and do a blog and a podcast too.
Yeah,
Well,
and I'm gonna
I did a podcast. I'm not doing it anymore, but there's 227 episodes of it still up on.
227. I didn't realize there was that many. Wow.
Well, mine
Yeah.
was like me, just it's not an interview, it's just me speaking, and a lot of them were like 6 minutes, 7 minutes.
Okay.
They're just blasts of stewisms. So some people like it because of that. You can
Well, and it was stew on this, right? That was the
stew on this, and
stew
that's
on
what
this.
the
I like
blog
that.
is now called. Yeah.
That was a good play on words. Well, you made a good comment to segue into what I think will be the heart of our conversation. Uh, I mentioned this before I brought you out of the waiting area into here, was that if there was anything that you are probably known for more than anything else is heart. If we just used one word, I think it is the most apt word to describe you, to describe your focus, to describe where you come from, to describe
Thank
what
you.
you teach. I think it's been you for, I don't know if it's been you for your whole life, because like you said, LACC, you were more brain than you were heart, but it has been you for almost your entire professional career in chiropractic for sure. Speaking to the wider audience, but also speaking to new chiropractors coming into the profession, and maybe not even just chiropractors. How about just as a human being, and how coming from the heart, how that affects everything around us and it affects our practice. Can you share with us some of your wisdom on that?
Yes, I'm on a quest to have chiropractic develop or announce a 34th principle.
Okay.
Maybe even 34th and 35th. The 34th would be about the heart because the heart is not mentioned in any of the 33 principles. It's not talked about a lot in chiropractic philosophy, if at all, other than just being another organ that needs to receive messages from brain to tissue cell.
True.
But, and this is probably not news to a lot of people with all the polyvagal stuff that's going around. I may be the only person on the planet who's not an expert in that stuff, but but I've gotten into things like heart math, the Heart Math Institute, which has been around for as long as I have
Yeah.
been practicing, and they and other things are confirming what to me was a metaphysical, a poetic, a mystical sort of belief that the heart was the center of our being, and the heart was our connection to source and to spirit and to innate intelligence. But now it's being proven. It's the brain may run the body, but it does a heck of a lot better job of it when it's connected to the heart, when the heart is engaged, as they say. So really, really quickly, when according to heart math, and I think this is being borne out in dorsal vagal studies and stuff, there's something like 100 times more nerve information going from heart to brain than from brain to heart.
Interesting.
The only thing the brain is running as far as the heart goes is stroke volume and heart rate, whereas the heart is continually informing the brain of our emotional state. So when we are in a state of fear or guilt or worry or angst or overwhelm, or could stop me anytime, but one of those, what HeartMath would call a depleting emotion or state of consciousness, then the messages going from the heart only reach our brainstem and limbic system, which are not the parts of the brain that remember what's important, or not, that remember our intention or our values. But as soon as we get ourselves in a state of compassion or love or joy or appreciation for somebody or something, then those messages reach our prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain that remembers our intentions and our values and what's important to us. So right away, it's like as soon as we are in that sort of state, we leap a million years on the evolutionary scale from reptile to evolved human.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it is almost like flipping a switch, right? So I don't know how we could ignore that in chiropractic, because I'm to the point now where I feel most of the interference that people have is between their heart and their head, not so much between their head and their tissue cells.
Well, who was it
Okay.
used to say that the biggest adjustment we had to make was the mental
Above the
adjustment?
Atlas,
Yeah,
yeah.
above the
So
Atlas.
so I was geographically a little off saying it was above the Atlas. I mean, I guess metaphorically it's still above the Atlas, but yeah, it's so yeah. We need a new safety pin cycle. We need to honor the heart somehow, because and chiropractors have done this innately, I think. And Jim Parker used to talk about that. He said there was quantity interference, which was what we tend to think about interference from a subluxation in the spine, but there's also quality interference in the nerve system. And I think this is exactly what he was talking about. And because he would say the adjustment is I'm stumbling on a word here, the answer for the quantity interference, and love, his whole thing was love is the answer for the quality interference. So, chiropractors are often accused of loving their patients, and that's what gets them well. I don't think that's such a horrible thing, right? I think we could use that and not hide from it.
Definitely
So
need more love in our society as a whole, especially at this day and age. So yeah, I agree.
So so the heart, and again, it's even more powerful when we can actually love ourselves and walk into the room in a state of love. You mentioned the word presence before. It's hard to be present when you're running all these agendas and expectations, and whether the person's going to like me or whether they're going to get it, whether they're going to pay, whether they're going to refer, all this stuff is not, that's all about me.
Yeah.
That's so if I can engage my heart, it's like it quiets all this down. I can become present. I can, because my heart doesn't know anything about agendas or expectations or getting anything from this person. Yeah, so obviously that has ramifications, not just for chiropractors. That's a place maybe we all want to explore a little more. We
Well,
just
you were talking about heart math, and I know of the organization and I know what it's based on. I understand all of that. I don't have a firsthand experience with it. I know a lot of uh, people I know who are health coaches who are really into heart math, but it uses heart rate variability as a tool. And that I'm very familiar with. I don't have it in my office. I would love to have it in my office, but I do not. But there are actually a lot of chiropractors who are using heart rate variability systems, monitors in their office now. And it makes a great tool because just getting adjusted and showing how it improves heart rate variability as an indicator. And heart rate variability is being shown over and over and over again scientifically to be an excellent measurement of health in the balancing of sympathetic and parasympathetic.
absolutely,
Yeah.
because it a higher heart rate variability allows us to be in what the heart math calls a coherent state, which of course is a word that's showing up in a lot of places. And yeah, so the thing is that they have identified something like 1,400 body systems that what's the word? Like when you have a big tuning fork and the other ones
Resonate.
start going. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's another word, but that's good enough. Yeah, they attune.
Attuned. Thank
They
you.
attune to the frequency of the heart. So yes, it has direct health ramifications, whether we're in a state of coherence or not. And, and you could see that on a heart rate variability graph. It's like it's how we spend most of our lives. Whereas, if we do, when we're using some of the tools, or we're able to learn how to access our heart, which interestingly to me, I never really knew what that meant, literally go to your heart. People would say that. It sounded good. I mean, I understood the value of maybe why you'd want to do it. But through heart math, I learned that that's pretty much a literal statement. It's really just about putting our attention there, right? And breathing in and out of it. That's what most of their tools are based on.
Right.
And conjuring up a memory or feeling, a regenerative feeling, even if we have to use a memory, and and just breathing that in and out of our heart. And God, you could see it on the graph if you're, because sometimes I do look at it, do look at the tech while I'm doing this. And yeah, it's a nice sine wave, and so it looks exactly how it feels.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's very interesting work. So yeah, it's exciting work too, because again, for me it reframes things we knew on some level, but it's being borne out. So I love that.
Yeah, I think some of the new science, like especially with heart rate variability, and how it's being utilized in chiropractic is revolutionary, in a lot of ways. And it's revolutionary in the sense also too that we're actually having another way of measuring outcomes when it comes to that. Now, large scheme of things, and this really goes back to, I think, the heart of the matter is, measuring the outcomes is all good and well and great. But, what we do in our offices, from the more practical standpoint and from the truest expression of what we do, the outcome measurement like that is secondary or tertiary. Another aspect of heart that I want you to speak from is, and maybe heart's not the right word, and maybe intent is probably a better word. Something you said earlier makes me kind of think of something I wanted to say here, and that you talked about how your first experience with Sigafus, it made me kind of chuckle inside, going into the room, kind of turning around and leaving and going out the other direction. But then eventually, what changed between here for you led you to connect more with what he said. The first time I ever heard Donnie Epstein speak, I'm sitting with my then girlfriend, now wife, and we're watching. And at the end of the whole thing, she's like, "Oh, it was so amazing. He was so amazing. Oh my God." And she was just like revolution. It was like totally crazy. Me, I'm looking at her going, "Are you freaking kidding me?" So I didn't understand a damn thing he said. Everything he said was like whew, over my head. And he just was like some crackpot on stage. I'm like, what the hell was he talking about? And then maybe a year later, it was like, boom, and everything just came on, right? Everything came on. And then everything he said, it affected me. And I'm assuming you're familiar with network spinal analysis pretty well, because I would assume you would be. That's the technique that we've been using in our office for forever. Intent is, the whole technique is nothing but an intent. It is the primary essence of network. If you go into network with any intent other than to connect with the person and make the right contact for that pattern, nothing's going to happen.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, it really is all about that. So, but I know that's been you from in your office. That's your entire office was created with intent, and your interactions with your practice members has been all about intent. And that comes from your heart as the primary. So
absolutely.
Share building a practice. New practitioners out there, practitioners that are struggling, even if you're not a chiropractor, you're maybe struggling in whatever practice you're doing, and how important that intent and that heart from that perspective is in building your office and building your community, that it's not going to happen without it.
I am going to make a statement that probably sounds too simple or something, but I really believe that everything we could possibly ever be looking for in chiropractic practice, whether it's results or referrals or money or whatever it is we hope to gain, boils down to that one moment of interaction with the person on the table. So intent becomes everything. Becomes everything. And so um and what am I bringing to that one moment of interaction? My, I don't want to bring the last patient who didn't get it. I don't want to bring like the future. I don't want to bring the discussion my wife and I had in the morning that set me off a little bit, or so if in that moment, and it may be more than one moment, but however long it is with that person, I just want to be present, loving, and holding a vision of spectacular things happening for this person because they're already whole, they're already healed, they already have everything they need. They might have a little interference that I could, do something about, but something miraculous is going to happen with this adjustment because the miracle's already within the person. I don't have to create that miracle.
I like
I don't
that.
have to know what it's going to be. I don't have to get attached to it being, readily apparent. I know it's going to happen. So that kind of intention, I've removed all my, again, my agendas, my expectations, my limitations, because I think we can bring interference to the table.
Ah, that see that right there is a profound statement. I like that a lot. That there's some deep truth in that statement.
Mm-hmm. And I could bring that interference by not being present. I could bring that interference by not being in a loving state and bringing some other kind of energy to it. And I could also definitely limit what's possible. We can call it interference by my, limitations in my mind about what's possible, or seeing them just as a number or as a means to an end or just as a low back or, whatever it happens to be. So in that way, intention becomes like critically important to me. Besides the fact that it's a heck of a lot more fun, I think. I think it's a heck of a lot more fun to bring that kind of intention and look and then see evidence of it or not, than to constantly be whatever disappointed or riding the credit blame roller coaster as many chiropractors do, as certainly as I did. I feel great when things look good and the results are good, and when they're not, I'm questioning, what did I do? What didn't I do? What should I have done? With that kind of intention, if somebody actually chooses not to continue care, I don't have to like lose sleep. I don't have to beat myself up. I don't have to spend hours worrying about what I did wrong or what I should have said or could have said or making them wrong and making them stupid or whatever it is. I just gotta believe, they made a choice. Made a choice based on their filters, their values. So when people would leave, I wasn't necessarily happy about it, and I might have been a little sad and disappointed because I knew I could help that person. But again, holding that kind of intention, it was easy for me to. I would do this visualization when I tried to imagine what a mother eagle would be feeling when the fledglings leave the nest. It's like they don't need me anymore, but I gave them everything I had, and I prepared them well for their journey through life. That was actually a little one of my nicknames over the years was Mother Eagle because of that. Wasn't crazy about that nickname, but
I was it's probably about right around the same time that I covered your practice. I went to do you remember Sue Brown, who created biogeometric integration, which was it is a chiropractic technique. I don't know who's running it now, but she did a seminar at Life West, and I was just really getting into network, and I'm like, this is network-ish, and I mean, came from network. That's Sue Brown was one of Donnie's first people that he trained, and so I went, and there was a lot of stuff in that seminar that I just wasn't really ready for. I wasn't really in the right space for. But there was one moment where we were supposed to be working on someone to practice some of the things that Sue had been talking about. And I was having a really hard time trying to connect with what she had said we should be able to do or see with this person. And it was my own limitations. It was my own interference. It was my interference that I brought to it, just like you said, right? And she came by and she said, you need some help? And I'm like, I'm just not feeling or seeing any of the things that I'm just having a really hard time. And she said, you're too much here. She tapped me. She said, you're too much here. You need to be right here. She goes, you need to think about something that helps bring you here. And then she did something that totally freaked me out. I mean, totally freaked me out, because at the moment that this was happening, I had just found out maybe a couple of weeks before that my wife was pregnant with our first child, but we had not told anyone yet. No one. And she taps me on the chest and she goes, you're about to have a child, aren't you? And I just sat there dumbfounded, like, how the hell did you know that? You know, I don't know where she got that. I don't know what her intuition led her to say that. I said, yeah. She goes, think about that. And then she just walked away. It was that simple. Boom, boom. And she was gone. And I was just rocked. I couldn't even believe, I mean, like, where'd that come from? We had not told anybody. It was brand new information for the two of us. We were still processing it. But that me bringing in my own obstacles, that was probably my biggest lesson in that whole seminar, was just me being my own worst enemy in that process. And that if I wanted to get an outcome, I need to come into it with no agenda. You know, my outcome needs to be the expression of this person's innate intelligence.
She was one of those scary ones.
Oh yeah. 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 Her and Donnie, I tell you, the stuff I've seen Donnie do has just been, I mean, I've got a list of things that I could share that have just been mind blowers, you know, where you're like, how does that, what? But
I had a few things happen like that, but yeah, I wouldn't put myself in that category though. So one of the things that was amazing to me on the Panama missions was somehow I knew exactly what I was going to adjust when I would walk up to somebody. And so I guess that's as close as I've come. And a lot of times I wouldn't even have to do it. Like, I'd be working in a circle of chairs and I would adjust this person and this person would, I mean, literally would, and they'd get up.
I've had that happen to me. I've had that happen to me.
Did you?
Yeah. I've had that happen to me at a network seminar. I've had that happen to me where I was the one that experienced that. Did you know, were you friends with Mike DeRouche?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike was one of my very first influences. He was probably 2 years ahead of me in school. You'll love this story. It was the month or so before I was supposed to go into chiropractic college. I was working at a Gold's Gym in the Valley and biding my time before I went in. And so I'm there in Gold's Gym, and I hear someone around the corner say something about adjustment. And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm going to be a chiropractic student. What are they talking about? And so I come around the corner and there's these 3 younger guys about my age, and they're adjusting each other on one of the benches. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And it ended up being Mike DeRouche, Luke Cohen, and I don't remember the third person. And they were students in chiropractic college. They were the kind of like the philosophy guys at school. And so they were so excited when they found out I was about to go in, and they were like, tomorrow night, you got to come with us. We're going to go see this speaker and you got to come with us. You have to. We're like, all right, whatever. It was Reggie Gold. So the very first speaker I ever heard was Reggie Gold, and it was like the month before I even came into chiropractic college. So
Good
it was
one.
just kismet, right?
Good one. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because Mike Darash has a lot to do with my coaching now because he used to do the Planet Chiropractic
Right.
website, one of the first
Yeah,
big chiropractic website,
absolutely. He
and
started that while
uh,
he was in
and
school.
and he did an interview with me, and because of that interview, I had people contacting me looking for coaching. It wasn't even something I thought I wanted to do,
Ah,
but anyway, is he still around?
I have not had communication with him in a
He was
long time.
he was part of the Panama missions too, so yeah.
That's why I
Seems
brought
like
that up, because he would tell me these stories, like you were alluding to, of that it was the lines were so long that you went hours adjusting, just boom, 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 boom. You're exhausted by the end of it, but at the same time, you really didn't even realize what
mm,
was happening. So you were seeing so many people, hundreds of people, and that all you had time for was connect, adjust, connect, adjust, connect, adjust. And that was it. And it really opens you up to being more instinctive.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I describe it, there was no food for the brain. So it was easier to be here. It's easier just to love that person and to hold this kind of vision. So it was practice for me.
Yeah.
We called them missions, but eventually I called them training trips because, because
No doubt.
the mission's in the office, the mission's in your town, and the mission is harder in your town and in the office because people speak the same language and they have
Kind of.
expectations and they have preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
And in Panama, if they had preconceived ideas, I didn't know what they were. They couldn't tell me what they were. Um, so yes, again, nothing to attach to. So this is where I learned the power of the heart and the power of that kind of connection. Because you're right, there wasn't look them in the eye. That was my way to connect. Adjust them. Just let my hands float up if I had to. Adjust them. That was my little thing. Was kiss them on the forehead,
Yeah.
and again, some of these, like you said, the lines were crazy. Some of these people waited for hours. Some of them were waiting for hours before we arrived, and we were on time.
Yeah.
And not once, not that I would have understood the words, but I would have understood the tone of something like, "That's it." I waited 4 hours for that. No, man, it was like huge smiles or
Bless you.
Dios
Yeah.
te bendiga. I learned what that meant pretty quickly. Um, God bless you, it means, in case you don't know. Yeah, it was phenomenal. So yes, there were people who went on those trips though, Michael, that came back and just they just realized it wasn't going to be like Panama in their office. And so it was almost deleterious to their career because
Yeah.
they saw what was possible, but they didn't see how it could be possible. Whereas I chose to assume, and again, I didn't really know, but I realized that probably the main thing that was different in Panama was me again, and my intention and and the interference or level of interference I was bringing to the table, and all that kind of stuff, and being attached to things and having these expectations and being attached to money and all the stuff that to me doesn't really matter or doesn't it pales in comparison to what's important in our relationship with people. So yeah, it was see what's possible, and then I devoted my life to simplifying. I even thought of getting rid of my tables and my CAs and my phone and just putting 4 black metal folding chairs like we used in Panama, and and I even thought about hanging out with my mother-in-law who spoke Yiddish and learning another language so I could speak it. Anyway, that should show you how desperate I was to then I realized that, I would still understand what the patients were saying, so it wasn't really a good idea. So how can I work on myself to be that chiropractor I am in Panama?
Yeah.
And the heart was my ticket Art was my approach to that question. Get myself in that kind of heart space. So I did a Sisyphus thing, which was actually a Jim Parker thing. I put what's called a love button, and it could be just a picture of a heart or something on the door jamb, because I use closed rooms but no doors, as you know, you were there,
Yeah.
and
You had a great setup because it was kind of like an octagon.
yeah,
So you
it
had
was
your
all
rooms
catty
were all
corner,
like this, and you had a center area with all your rooms kind of like that. I loved that.
right? Yeah, the big area we used for the talks and for the kids, but yeah, I would start every adjustment by as I was walking in the door to push that love button to remind me, I'm going to empty myself of all the mental chatter. I'm going to.
Another thing you did, and I loved this, um, was you had a bowl outside before they went into the main area, and it had strips of paper on it, and you had a pen or a pencil, and the instructions were for before you pass through these doors, any negative thoughts that you have, you need to write them on this piece of paper and put them in this bowl. At the end of the day, I'm going to burn those papers. So you're taking out your negative energy before you walk through the door. Leave it here. Don't bring it inside.
Yeah,
I just
there
thought that
was
was so
there
great.
was a little sign next to the open doorway to the back area that said no negative thoughts allowed beyond this point. I used to tell people you'll get zapped if you try it. So yeah, they would dump their negative thoughts, and then they would take one of those crumpled up pieces of paper, which had a nice positive affirmation to replace it with.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we wanted them to be in that same mindset and have the same intention. This is why I chose to do a pre-care mandatory talk, because I wanted them to be, to at least have a glimpse of that intention, because incredibly magical and powerful things happen when their intention matches ours.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's the ideal situation. And I did the talk first because I felt that if I only had one interaction with the person, I actually wanted them to know why they were getting adjusted rather than just get adjusted without knowing why. That was my thing.
What
That
your
was one of
intent
the ways
was.
I overcame my resistance about having people come to a talk first. It was my resistance. Once I was good with it, nobody ever argued about it. These days might be a little more difficult, but yes, that's I guess, an overriding message or a recurring message in our talk so far is um, how much of the stuff we lay on our patients as far as not getting it or whatever is, are we bringing?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And I
we don't ask that question to beat ourselves up, but it's a process, it's a journey, So um, we have to deal with that interference in ourselves first, I think, before we can be as effective as we can be in dealing with their interference.
100%. Do you mentioned before that you do coaching not just for chiropractors but other professionals, and I'm assuming that that's a theme that you bring to all professions. That the idea of getting the hell out of your own way, in a sense, is so vital. Whether you're going to be doing accounting, or you're going to be doing the CEO running a company, or you're going to be a personal trainer, a health coach, or a chiropractor, that theme is still exactly the same when it comes to you um, realizing what you want first, getting out of your own way second.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes getting to what people want is a journey because we're not used to thinking about what we want.
Oh no. Yeah, no, not
We're
at all.
usually we're usually more focused on what we don't want, and we
Truth,
generally
yes.
we generally talk more about what we don't want, and then we wonder why we have so much of what we don't want. Sorry, I made that sound simplistic, but it's true. I noticed that in my own life. So yeah, my work with people is so, I realized at some point that I was obviously operating under the belief system that if I beat myself up enough, then I would feel good about myself so I could be the person I wanted to be. But So if anybody's harboring that belief, I would just save you a bunch of time and energy and heartbreak and say it can't be done. You can't feel better about yourself by beating yourself up. So part of going to your heart is learning how to love yourself and appreciate yourself and acknowledge yourself. It was a, Michael, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about when you have a patient who comes in and they complain about their knee or their shoulder or something, and you have to remind them that 3 months ago when they started, they were blind. Right? It's a bit of an exaggeration, but I'm sure you
Yes.
experience it, and I think the reason for that is just people don't acknowledge the steps along the way. They don't acknowledge what's good. They don't acknowledge if they do acknowledge what's good, it's usually for a millisecond with the thought of, oh, this can't last. Right. So there's something magical about finding our heart because our heart is actually encouraging. Our heart is actually comforting. Our heart gives us whole different messages than our head tends to because, our head seems to know and remember all these things that we hold against ourselves, which we conclude means we don't deserve or it's not so, but we're all, we're all prone to that. So it's an amazing organ, the brain. And I don't know, people think think you should get a lobotomy or something. No, the brain is an amazing servant. But we need to keep it in that role, like BJ used to talk about. Educated could be the servant, but innate has to be the master. So to me, that's just another way of saying let's let the heart lead. The head can support it. The head is, and it's always going to be there to alert us to possible danger, and because that's what it does best. But we don't have to buy into every story it's that we've allowed it to tell us over the years, because again, the heart is a different story. And until we engage the heart, we really can't get to the centers of our brain that can do this. It's like, this is why people attempt to change through willpower or through, it's very difficult to do because it's like one part of the brain trying to eliminate the other part of the brain. It's not sustainable for the brain to do that, right? It doesn't want to be the servant, because it's so used to leading. So the best approach is just to get it a little quieter and to get in here and keep an eye on it.
There was a phrase, and I don't remember who said it, and I'm sure other people have said it, but in a seminar once that they talked about the mother, father, teacher, preacher, and those were the examples of very important people in your life that create the tapes that you run in your head. So you've got these tapes running in your head all the time that tell you who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, etc. And it's your mother, father, teacher, preacher. And that, part of our task is to, I don't know if you can get rid of those tapes, but try to circumvent those tapes so they're not running your life.
Yeah, you can at least question them.
At least question them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the essence of Zen Buddhism. Is not necessarily so, which is very true about a lot of our thoughts. But most of the time, I guess we're in this river and we don't even notice, And this was a Dick Santo thing. In fact, he talked about the Mississippi River. We have Mississippi rivers in our head, and as soon as some stimulus happens, we're in that boat, and the next thing we know, we're in New Orleans. And we may hate New Orleans. We may find New Orleans very disempowering and very whatever. And nothing against New Orleans. This is a metaphor. This is an analogy, right? But if we get in the boat, and the boat's on the Mississippi River, that's where we're going to end up. It's a simple matter of geography, right?
Right.
So yes, being mindful, having practices to find the heart. It's like jumping out of the boat. It's like because that boat is not going to take me where I want to go. It never has, and it never will.
Yeah.
And there may be something very comfortable about the boat. There might be something very familiar and beckoning about the boat. But if I practice this, one day I'm going to look at that boat and say, well, I'm kind of tired of Cajun food. I want to go in a different direction and make a different choice. And then it's like I'm dredging out a new river in my brain. So again, it's hard to do this without enlisting the heart and these, what they call regenerative emotions, which, by the way, I've never suggested that people live in more gratitude or love or joy and have them complain to me that it was like torture or well, that sucked. I wish you had different advice. No, it's kind of pleasant to be in gratitude and joy and peace and those sorts of states of consciousness.
We talked about the heart rate variability, and we talked about the sympathetic versus parasympathetic, and it relates directly back, if we use some scientific jargon, to what you're talking about with going down the Mississippi. I often use in our office the idea that when we talk about fight or flight, that's sympathetic. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. People don't usually hear that and that phraseology as much because fight or flight is more sexy. But we think of fight or flight and we think of something, huge and dramatic, right? So a grizzly bear is running at us, fight or flight. But most people don't think about just the fact that if you have those mother, father, teacher, preacher tapes playing in your head, if they're going around in a reel over and over again, that's creating sympathetic stress. Your sympathetic system does not delineate between the grizzly bear and your boss yelling at you, or the grizzly bear and you being late for the bus, or the grizzly bear and the dialogue in your head that tells you you're no good. It still creates sympathetic stress. Just takes you away from it.
I'm smiling because apparently there's something happening out here that is bringing up some sympathetic stress. Can I come back in 1 minute? Is that gonna...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No, you go ahead. But I'll continue.
Okay, you continue.
I'll continue with that thought process. So for those watching, so in a sympathetic state, when you have increased sympathetic tone in your body, and that's my phraseology there, but it can be created by any ongoing stressor, and I'll put that in quotes. So physical stress can do that. Maybe you have a low back problem or a neck problem or something that's a chronic irritation. That chronic irritation creates a stress that builds up over time. It could be chemical stress. So let's say you live in a moldy environment, and even if you don't know it, and that mold is constantly giving you mycotoxins that are creating a stress. Or it's emotional stress where, once again, maybe it's a constant stress from a job, okay, or a financial situation or a relationship or something in the past that is a constant wheel, that hamster wheel that turns in the brain and gives you that constant stress. Any of those things are creating this increased sympathetic tone. So as Dr. Bittman was talking about, the heart, that heart rate variability, getting yourself back into a parasympathetic state is necessary, not just important, but necessary for healing, because your body doesn't heal in a sympathetic state. It heals in a parasympathetic state. So you think about like fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia, from my perspective, typically emotional and or physical trauma creates fibromyalgia. It creates a sympathetic tone that then creates connective tissue damage, basically, that's not healing because the person is wrapped up in this sympathetic tone. When the person can get into parasympathetic and stay in parasympathetic, the body starts to heal. The fibromyalgia goes away, etc. And this can be said for a lot of things. So I'm not sure how much you heard of my rambling, but
I heard it all.
But that idea, going back to heart rate variability, that idea going back to my intent into the world, right? Really relates back to that sympathetic parasympathetic state, because like you said, you don't want this to be the master, especially that reptilian brain, which is where we find the limbic system, where we get sympathetic. You don't want that to be the master. And for a lot of people, especially in the time we live now, that is where they are almost 24/7.
Yeah, because as soon as we go here, we go into the exact same physiology we were in when the event or the trauma or whatever it's reminding us happen. So yes, it's not just, it's not just the brain. It's the whole body contributes to that. So yes, it's great. I look at the heart as like the stabilizers on a ship in a storm, or something to grab onto, something, to recognize when we're in that boat, to recognize when we're rapidly going downstream without a paddle, so to
So
speak.
how do we do that? How do we do what's a simple strategy, maybe from heart math, that a simple strategy that anybody can use right after watching this to help break that cycle, at least temporarily, to get themselves back into their heart's true intent?
Well, the first step is being aware. So that takes practice. All this takes practice.
Yes.
Okay. So you can make an intention at first just to be aware, not even worry about what to do about it, just to be aware, because just the awareness is going to create some space between you and the boat. Just the awareness is going to realize maybe you're having these thoughts, but these thoughts don't necessarily have to have you. Take a breath. Uh, right. So, but the main tool I use again is a heart math tool, and it's stopping, because that's key. That's a key element, because we're in a river, and and if we don't do something to actively grab on or stop, it's there's one place we're going to end up, and it's going to be that same old place. So, a breath into the heart, a with again, just stopping and accessing a memory or a person or a dog. Dogs work really well.
Dogs.
Babies, like Sue knew with you,
Yeah.
something that you unconditionally love, that you could just think about and brings a smile and you appreciate it, or it brings some compassion. Just doing that. It's like a wind comes in and just stirs everything up, and it takes practice, and it takes practice. I wouldn't only attempt to do this when you need to.
Yes.
Right.
That's
So
a
so
great point.
whether it's periodically throughout the day, set a timer. That's what I did. Set a timer for once an hour. And a beautiful question to ask you when the timer goes off, or however you choose to do this, is, where am I? Am I in the boat? Am I in my head? Am I in old pathways? Or am I in my heart? Am I in the present moment? Do I have access to my values again? So where am I is a beautiful, beautiful question, because I can't change where I am if I don't realize where I am.
Good point.
Right? Especially if I'm so used to being in the boat, so to speak. So yeah, but and again, it could be a little bit of gratitude. It could be just saying a few things you're grateful for. It could be stepping out into nature. Again, it's just something to break the cycle, and something that works for you to get you grounded and get you back on your, back in access to those higher centers of your brain. What Abe Lincoln called the higher angels of our nature.
I like that.
We can't reach them from the boat. We can't reach them from the same old pathways. So hopefully that's helpful. Yes, it's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
key
Yeah.
thing is practicing. So I practice this in my meditation time. So if anybody's meditating, you could just add a little element of,
Where am I?
because even sitting in front of my altar, I can get in the boat. I don't know about you, but I could certainly lose sight of my mantra or my breath or whatever it is I'm trying to focus on, and get involved in what's going to happen later that day and all this kind of stuff. So it's a great place. It's a little easier place to be aware when that's happening, and to do that reframe right then and there.
That's good. Really good advice. The fact of emphasizing that it needs to be some kind of regular practice, because you're right. Because if you're not, you can't throw a winning pitch unless you practice the winning pitch over and over again, right? You can't just
Yeah.
get in the game and go, there it is. In our first office, we had a slogan over the doorway, and it said, consciousness, awareness, change, growth.
Hmm.
And what I used to teach in our opening seminar that we did was, you can't change what you're not aware of. That was the phrase we used to always use.
Exactly.
So But the thing is, consciousness has to really happen before awareness happens. And once you have the consciousness and you become aware, that's when growth and change occur. Because you want change, and they say change is hard, but change is not hard. Change is easy if awareness is there.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, absolutely. Change is next to impossible if awareness is not there.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's very good. I absolutely recommend starting some kind of practice. Gratitude, for me is very effective for this. I know there are scientists that study happiness. My question is always, I wonder if they're happy about it. But but so far, apparently, and this is a few years old now, but the only practice that has been objectively shown to create a prolonged increase in happiness is a daily gratitude practice. So that would be my initial, that is the initial piece of wisdom I give to all my clients, to anybody I'm teaching or serving. Yeah, it's hard to be grateful and think about what you don't want at the same time. It's hard
Absolutely.
to be grateful and thinking, holding all this stuff on yourself and people at the same time. You can get right back into it if you wanted to, but it's going to be a little harder. The more I find the more we're grateful for, the more things we have to be grateful for. And so that's an easy one. It's easy, but it still can be a challenge, especially on a bad day or something. But from the time my daughter was 2 or 3 years old, she doesn't live here anymore. We've had a nightly ritual where, each of us got a chance to say what we were grateful for that day. And I must say, when we started doing it, especially if it wasn't a great day, we would have much to say. But the other two would just wait patiently until, nothing was not an acceptable answer. So, and you get better at it, you do, because you start to notice more, which is, again, it's another awareness tool. It's to be grateful. That might be counterintuitive, but it is. Right?
Gratitude is a big thing.
It is a big thing. So
You ever watch Theo Von?
a little bit.
So Tony Robbins, you'd have to look it up or do a search. Tony Robbins was on Theo Von's show. This was a while ago. I don't remember exactly how long ago. But it's an excellent episode for anybody to watch, because there's a lot of what you're talking about in some of the stuff that he says in that, because most of that entire episode is a therapy session with Tony Robbins and Theo Von.
Nice.
And Tony Robbins is basically helping Theo Von work through his junk. But he says a lot of the same things. He talks about his daily practice of writing down a certain number of things that he's grateful for, writing down a certain number of things that he wants to change in his life or do things. And he does this as a regular ritual every single day. And it is that ritualistic aspect, that repetitiveness, that creates a situation where it's no longer something you have to think about. I used to always use the example of, when you drive to work or drive home from work, how many times do you do it and you end up there and you're like, you don't even realize how you got there, right? It's totally unconscious. And that's because you've done it so many times that your brain starts wrapping around other concepts as you're driving. Next thing you know, you're at the office. And that actually is to your detriment sometimes, because maybe you didn't plan on going to your office. Maybe you plan on going to the grocery store and suddenly you're at your office. Right. But it's that repetition that helps it become second nature.
And who knows what you missed along the way, right? Yeah.
That's true too.
No, that's absolutely true. So first time I went to Europe, I was exposed to the French press, as we call it here, cafetière. I'll make this a short story, but I really liked it. Got one when I got home. Didn't really like cleaning it, so after a couple of months, I get tired of cleaning it, so I go back to the automatic coffee maker. Okay, yeah, are you with me so far?
Yes.
So the thing is, with the French press, it leaves a bunch of oils and grounds at the bottom, so you learn you can't take the last sip. Okay, so I went back to the automatic coffee maker, which does not leave any grounds or oils in it, and you can take the last sip. But I realized after about 3 weeks, I was still leaving a sip of coffee in the cup, which to me is like a sin. I would never choose to leave a cup of coffee, but it was amazing how quickly that happened. I was just automatic pilot, right? So that was just an illustration of what you were just talking about. It just occurred to me how much am I missing being an automatic pilot? I mean, I have no idea who counts these things, but supposedly we have like 55 or 60,000 thoughts a day or something, and 95% of them tend to be exactly the same thoughts as yesterday.
Interesting.
It's extremely hard to change based on that fact alone, isn't it? And so yeah, we access our heart, we hold different intentions, we do some practice, then it's like our thoughts change. They really do change. We start to instead of maybe those depleting thoughts gaining momentum and making that Mississippi River like a raging flash flood, you know, which makes it even more unlikely we're going to get out of it until we've been in New Orleans for a couple of weeks and we're just sick of it. Yeah, it's sorry, I had too many metaphors going there, so
One of
I
my
slipped.
one of my all-time favorite quotes from Donnie Epstein. I use this all the time. He once said, "It's very hard to make healthy decisions from an unhealthy place." And I use that a lot because people tend to spiral. They get stuck in that river and they get dragged dragged away by the river. And it's because once again we don't have anything to grab hold of. It's the unhealthy habits. And so the only way to start making healthy decisions is to make a healthy decision and start doing that one repetitively. It doesn't have to be something that is groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be something that changes everything all at once. It just has to be something that's repetitive to start putting you into that place like you're talking about. It's got to put you into that place. So if it is a daily gratitude journal, great place to start. Gratitude's a great place to start. That's perfect.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you're right. It's we have grooved the other rivers repetitively, so it just sort of makes sense that we need to do something else repetitively to create new rivers in there. And maybe, and not maybe, but the promise is we don't have to put so much conscious energy and intention into it. After a while, it becomes more like default
Second nature.
place. So,
Yeah.
but that's not going to happen if we just do it once in a while or just do it, when we absolutely need to, because again, the likelihood of it even happening in those moments, if we haven't practiced, is pretty low.
Exactly.
But that gives us the opportunity to beat ourselves up some more because, I had this tool and I didn't use it, right? But so I give everybody who's listening permission to stop beating yourself up. It might be the national pastime, it might be the international pastime, but it doesn't serve. It really doesn't serve. You know what I mean? If it helped us to do better, if it helped us to make different choices, if it helped, to me, it digs out that river even deeper. So, it's okay. It's okay to support. One of my things with clients is I want to help them become their own greatest ally.
Lovely. I like that.
And I only know of one organ we can really count on for that purpose. Our brain just ultimately, I think we'll learn to trust it. But in the meantime, it likes New Orleans for some strange reason.
No offense to New Orleans. Once again,
No,
we'll just put that out there.
I have to add that because I used to use this in my ministry a lot, this analogy, and my mom would often come up and listen to me speak, and every single time she would say, "What's wrong with New Orleans, Stu?" Like, Mom, nothing's wrong with New Orleans. If you wanted to go there, if that was your choice, I'm all for it. Anyway, she never quite got it, but that's okay.
Well, Stu, I know it's coming close to the time where you need to start saying goodbye. So I want to do two things. One, I want to show your your website and stuff. So I'm going to do that here in just a minute.
Okay.
But
thank you.
anything that you want to say to kind of summarize your message, anything you want to say out there to new chiropractors or to people struggling in their lives with things as a kind of final message?
Yes, I would say that no matter what's going on, you are more than enough by virtue of having, however you want to look at it, an innate intelligence, which to me is unlimited. And the more we dedicate ourselves to removing interference to that within ourselves, the more joyful, the more peaceful, the more loving we will be. We'll be able to express and experience more love, and that's just gonna play out in every aspect of our life, our career. So let's start from a point that you're already okay, that you already have everything you need. That's obviously a big concept in chiropractic, right? It's not just true of our patients for their well-being and their health, but it's true for us and everything that we dream of and everything that we want to manifest in life. You already have everything you need. So yeah, let's learn to enlist the heart so we can be our own greatest ally and get that stuff done.
Awesome. That good closing paragraph there. I like that. That was good.
Thank you.
I'm going to show your website. This is your website. This is bittmanbliss.com. What can they find on this website? What do we have here? The coaching here.
It's
This primary thing for coaching. If you want,
we try to stay up on the events. We usually only do that once a year. So yeah, it has everything that we do. We do a Thursday Zoom call every week. It's called the Warrior Circle. That's in there somewhere. That's a 25-minute non-interactive Zoom thing. I speak for about 10 minutes. My wife Hillary leads the meditation on the same topic. So that's every Thursday.
And that's on this?
It's in there somewhere.
Okay.
It's in the event schedule. Yeah, and you can access the blog and the 227 podcast episodes on there. So yeah, just about everything that I do is in there somewhere.
And there's also your
that's the blog itself on Substack.
So this is stubittman.substack.com.
Yes.
Yeah, I've read through a lot of the stuff on here. You got some great stuff in here. I love it.
Thank you. Your
message is clean and it is consistent and precise. I love it. And then there's also stewonthis.buzzsprout. I didn't know of Buzzsprout, so this is a new one for me. That's cool. Stewonthis.buzzsprout.com, and you can listen to all of Dr. Stu's episodes here. And as he was saying, they're short. So it's not like you have to commit yourself to something like I do, which is hour and a half to 2 hours.
Good for a drive. You can get a bunch of them handled on any sort of lengthy drive.
Look at all that gorgeous Lake Tahoe visage there.
It's a lovely place.
This is Stu's backyard, basically, right here. Yeah.
Yeah, you're all welcome. You're all welcome to my backyard. So,
I would go back there in a heartbeat. I tell you.
You're more than welcome. I haven't seen Julie in as many years as I haven't seen you, I imagine.
I know. She's going to love watching this. She would have loved to have come on and said hello. We live in Cincinnati, Ohio now. So people, will always ask, do you like the weather there? Do you like the snow? And I'm like, you know what? When I lived in California and I could drive up to Tahoe, I loved the snow, looked forward to it, loved it. Just joy, nothing but joy. Can't stand it now. It's now when it happens, it's just, I dread it because it shuts everything down in Cincinnati. Everything closes. Yeah.
I hear you. I don't know if I'm quite as excited about it as I've been in other times in my life, as we're about to get into that time of the year.
We just had our first snow last week, very first snow. And this is the earliest I think we've ever had it.
We've had some dustings, but the fun is about to begin.
Well, Stu, hang out for a minute. I'm going to close things up here. I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. A pleasure. Loved it. Just loved the
My
fact that
pleasure,
we got
Mike.
to connect again too. So you've
Awesome.
always been one of my
Thanks for
favorite people.
having me. It was great. I loved it.
A-
Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope everybody got something really genuine out of this. Heart and love being something that we should all try to put as a practice in our lives. And so until next time, I will see you on the flip side. Bye-bye.